Good afternoon. We have learned until now Act 3, Scene 2 and 3 of Merchant of Venice. In this class, let us learn one of the chapters of the story. I'm going to teach today The Little Matchgirl, written by Hans Christian Andersen. Hans Christian Andersen was a Danish writer who is best known for his fairy tales. However, his stories are not known for just children alone, but have a universal appeal that transcends age and culture. Andersen had a very unhappy childhood, therefore, most of his stories are dealing with loss and death, uh, which reflects sadness, etc. And this particular story also has a tragic end, which deals with the story of a little match girl. This is a detective story. What is a detective story? Detective story is a story which is intended to teach people a moral lesson. The story is set in the New Year Eve, and it has a style of third person narration, narrated as if the third person narrates a story. The themes of the story are class differentiation. The story depicts the class differentiation that existed during the Victorian era, especially when the middle class emerged and they took a important percentage of the workplace. The story also depicts a faith and hope. Okay, the little match girl is represented and as a person who has got a great faith in God, and also her imaginations are depicted as the hopes that she would have in her life. We have two main characters in the story, that is Little Match Girl and the grandmother. Now let us see how appropriate the title is, The Little Match Girl. The title is very appropriate because the is story revolves around the little match girl. The narrator has not given any name for the girl because this poor little girl is referred to all the poor girls who underwent class differentiation and poverty during the Victorian era. So let us begin the story. It is bitterly cold. Snow was falling, and the darkness was gathering, for it was the last evening of the old year. It was New Year's Eve. So the story begins with the narration of the climate. Okay, it was bitterly cold. Snow was falling, darkness was gathering, because it was the eve of New Year. So when the snow falls, and especially winter cold night, we see darkness everywhere. I have already told you this story is set in the New Year's Eve. In the cold and gloom, a poor little girl walked bareheaded and barefoot through the streets. So during this winter cold night, you can just imagine how cold it would be if someone moves around especially during the night, bareheaded, barefoot through the streets. It is, it cannot be imagined by any of us, isn't it? So this poor girl during this Christmas Eve was moving around the street barefooted without any covering of the leg, which means without any shoes or slippers. And she was bareheaded, no caps, nothing, was walking through the streets. She had been wearing slippers, it is true, when she left home, but what good were they? Yes, it was true that she was wearing slippers when she left home, but what was the condition of the slippers. Were they good enough for her? Whether it was suiting to her? They had been her mother's, so you can imagine how big they were. The fact is that she was wearing the slippers when she left home, but those slippers belonged to her mother. So you can imagine if a small child wear a big slipper, it would be very difficult for a child to walk. You see in our house, if you have small kids at home, they would always try to wear the slippers of the elders in the house, and they find it very difficult to walk with the slippers. Similarly, here the little girl was wearing the slippers of her mother, which was huge enough for her to wear it. The little girl had lost them as she ran across the street to escape from two carriages that were being driven terribly fast. And already she was wearing the big slippers which belonged to her mother, and she lost them while she was trying to cross or escape from the two carriages that were driven very fast. One slipper could not be found, and a boy had run off with the other. So, one of the slippers she could not even trace out. The other one had been taken by one of the naughty boys, and he ran off with the other, saying that it would come in very handy and as a cradle someday when he had children of his own. So he was fooling the little girl, saying that this slipper is of any use right now, but it would be useful when he will have his own children when he grows old, and it would be used as a it would be easy for him to use as a cradle for the child, his own child. So the little girl walked about the streets on her naked feet, which were red and blue with the cold. So therefore, now she even cannot have a slipper because it had been lost. Therefore, she started to walk through the street barefooted. Therefore, because of the coldness, the color of the feet changed into blue and red. So if someone walks through the cold area, you can see barefooted. You can see it because of the coldness, the color of the body will be changed. Therefore, this little girl's feet also changed into red and blue. In her old apron, she carried a great many matches, and she had a packet of them in her hand as well. So, in her apron, she had a great many matches, and a few packets of matches were in her hand. So you see when people move around through the street to sell something, they will have a number of things in their hand in order to demonstrate that what they are selling. Therefore, here the child also has a number of packets in her hand to show that she has matches to sell, and many of the packets are there in her apron as well. Nobody had brought any from her, and no one had given her a single penny all day, and nobody has bought any matchboxes during the day, and therefore she was not able to earn anything. She crept along, shivering and hungry, the picture of misery, poor little thing. Okay, the little girl therefore started to creep along. Creep along means finding it difficult to walk because of the cold. She was shivering and very hungry all day. She could not eat anything. So it is a picture of misery, picture of unhappiness. Therefore, poet ironically says that it is a poor little thing. The child's unhappiness and helplessness is referred by using the word poor little thing. The snowflakes fell on her long golden hair, which curled so prettily about her neck. The snow was continuously falling on her head, no cap, nothing. Therefore, the snow was curled around her hair. She did not think of her appearance now, but she is least bothered about her appearance because she has only one intention, that is to sell the matches and go back home. Lights were shining in every window, and there was a glorious smell of roast goose in the street, for this was New Year's Eve and she could not think of anything else. So lights were shining all through the streets and in every house because it was New Year's Eve and everybody was there to welcome the new year. So the house were lighted and it was nice to see. And she could also get the smell of the roasted goose as she was wandering through the street. So this is one of the reasons why she could not think of anything else. First reason is that she was having a great thought of selling one of the matches, then only she can go back home. Second, her thoughts of the poverty, hungry, and all other feeling of coldness, etc., has been driven away through the thought of the smell of the roasted goose, the lights that had been used to decorate the houses, etc. She huddled down in the heap in a corner formed by two houses, one of which projected further out into the street than the other. Now, she took help of a corner that was a gap that was found between the two houses, and one of the houses projected towards the street than the other. But though she tucked her feet, little legs up under her, she felt colder and colder. So when you sit somewhere during the cold, you feel to uh, pull or gather your legs, which are barefooted, under the dress. Similarly, although she tried to tuck her little legs under her, but she felt more colder and colder then. She did not dare to go home, for she had sold no matches and earned no single penny. Why she didn't feel to go home? Because she did not sell any of the matches and could not earn anything. So there must be some reason why she cannot go home. Her father would be sure to beat her, and besides, it was so cold at home, for they had nothing but a roof above them, and the wind whistled through that, even though the largest cracks were stuffed with the straw and rats. There are two reasons why she could not go back home. One, she did not sell the matches, and she was very sure that her father would beat her if she reaches home without selling the matches. Second thing, she had a very poor house. Okay, it has hardly a roof, and although the cracks of the houses and walls were being stuffed with straw and rags. Rags means leftover things. The when wind blows, the air would come in, and whether she sits in the open area where she sits now or goes home, it doesn't make any difference. Therefore, she thought of not going back home. Her thin hands were almost numb with cold. Numb means insensible. Because of the coldness, her thin hands seems to be insensible. If only she dared to pull just one small match from the packet, strike it on the wall and warm her fingers. Okay, because her hands seems to be numb, it was even hard for her to take out one of the matchsticks from the pocket and then strike it on the wall to warm herself fingers. You can just imagine how cold the night would be. She pulled out, scratch, how it spluttered and burnt. So when you sit in the dark area, even as even the light of the matchstick seems to make a great effect, makes a great effect. It seems that it is lighting the whole area where you sit. Therefore, the same thing is being felt by the little girl as well. When she lit the little matchstick, she felt as if it has it had been made a great flame. It had a warm, bright flame like a tiny candle when she held her hand over it. But what a strange light! So the light of the matchstick seems to be like a tiny candle, and she felt it was a great, strange light. It was very strange for her. It seemed to the little girl as if she were sitting in front of the great iron stove with polished brass knobs and brass ornaments. So the little match girl was feeling that she was sitting in front of a large iron stove which was polished with knobs and brass ornaments. Why did she feel that she was sitting in front of the iron stove while she has burned the little match? Because it makes a great effect for her, because it is bitterly cold outside. Even a little warmthness can create a huge change or huge effect on the child. That is why that a small little matchstick created an imagination, a huge flame in her life, and it has given a huge effect of warmthness in her to her. The fire burned so beautifully and gave out such a lovely warmth, and she could feel lot of warmthness when she lighted the little match. Oh, how wonderful that was! She felt a great relief. The child had already stretched her feet to warm them too. So when she felt warmth, she stretched her feet towards the flame to warm it. When out went the flame, the stove vanished, and there she sat with a burnt match in her hand. Okay, so when the fire flamed, when the fire vanished, she sat there with a burnt match in her hand. See, it is terribly cold. Even if she has burnt the matches, and she was sitting with the burnt match over there, it didn't make any difference. She did not feel warm. She did not feel burning sensation at all. So when the hand is numb, the coldness doesn't affect due to the coldness. Even if we keep our hand on the warm thing, it doesn't affect at all suddenly. Therefore, the child was sitting with the burnt matchstick because it could give her warmthness. She struck another. It burned clearly, and where the light fell upon the wall, the bricks became transparent like a gauze. So she struck the second one. It was clearly burned, and she could see the bricks of the walls that become very transparent like gauze, means like a thin fiber. She could see right into the room where the shining white cloth was spread on the table. So when the second one was burned, she has imagined that she was sitting in a room where the shining white cloth was spread on the table. So she imagined as if she was sitting in a room where a shining white cloth was being spread on the table. It is covered with beautiful china, and in the center of it stood a roast goose stuffed with prunes, apples, and steaming deliciously. So, her imagination, she saw a dining table which is covered with a white cloth and uh, has got a climbing plant nearby. The center of the table is set with a roasted goose which is stuffed with plum, apples, which is steaming deliciously ready to eat. Why she is imagining like that? Now she is very hungry and she can't have anything right moment to eat, but only she can imagine. And why she is dreaming about the roasted goose? Because she heard the smell of the roasted goose as she was walking along. And what was even more wonderful was that the goose hopped down from the dish and waddled across the floor with a craving knife and fork in its bag, waddled straight up to the poor child. So, what is the another imagination? The surprising fact was that the goose hopped down. Hopped means have a short jump. So the goose jumped down from the dish, waddled and stepped across the floor, carrying knife and the fork on its back, and moved towards the little poor child. See her imagination. So she is having she has a great craving for food, and she is imagining the child. Sorry, the goose, roasted goose, jumped down from the table and moved towards the girl with a fork and a small spoon on its back. Then out went the match, and nothing could be seen but the thick cold wall. So suddenly the match burnt off, and she could not see anything but only the cold wall. So what did she imagine when she struck the first match? She felt like she was sitting in front of the warm iron stove. Second stove. Second was she imagined that she was sitting when the second match struck. She felt as if she was sitting in front of a large table, dining table, which is covered with white cloth, and a roasted goose which is ready to eat in front of in the middle of the table. She also had imagined that the roasted goose jumped down from the table towards her direction, the spoon and fork on her back, on its back. She struck another match, and suddenly she was sitting under the most beautiful Christmas tree. When she struck the third one, she felt as if she was sitting under the Christmas tree, beautiful Christmas tree. So it is Christmas and New Year's Eve. So imagination of the child, it will be related to that. It was much longer, larger, and much lovelier than the one she had seen last year through the glass doors of the rich merchant's house. So this Christmas tree was much more beautiful and lighter than one which she had seen during the last Christmas Eve through the glass window of the merchant's house. 1,000 candles lit up the green branches, and gaily colored bowls like those in shop windows looked down upon her. So, this particular Christmas tree, which she has in her imagination, was lighted with thousands of candles, and could also see merrily colored balls that were hung around. So you can see how the Christmas tree is being decorated with the balls, with different variety of shining mm, things, stars, and all the things. The little girl reached forward with both hands, then went out the match. When she was about to touch the Christmas tree, the match lit off. The many candles on the Christmas tree rose higher and higher through the air, and she saw that they had now turned into bright stars. The many candles on the Christmas tree rose higher and higher through the air. So, the many candles from the tree rose higher and higher through the air. She saw that they had now turned into bright stars, and these candles of the Christmas tree, which has went higher and higher, seemed to be like bright stars, turned to be like bright stars. One of them fell, streaking the sky with light. One of them, one of the stars seemed to have fallen down, which spread an irregular. Third imagination of the child as she struck the matchstick was that she was sitting under a large Christmas tree, which was much bigger than and larger than and beautiful than one she had seen last year during the Christmas Eve through the glass window of the merchant's house. And she also has imagined that the candles that were lit around the Christmas tree moved higher and higher, and one of them seemed to be and have turned to be bright stars, and one of the stars fell down, creating a irregular light. Now someone is dying, said the little girl, for her old grandmother, the one who had been good to her but who was now dead, had said, whenever a star falls, a soul goes up to God. Now, when she has imagined that one of the stars fell down, she thought that someone is going to die. How did she learn that when the star falls down, someone would die? She has learned from her grandmother. Her grandmother was the only soul of consolation in her life, only one whom she was loved by. So she learned in her childhood from her grandmother that whenever a star falls, it means that one soul goes up to God. She struck another match on the wall. Once more, there was light, and in the glow stood her old grandmother. Oh, so bright and shining, and looking so gentle, kind, and loving. Granny, cried the little girl, oh, take me with you. I know you will disappear when the match is burnt out. You will vanish like a warm stove. The lovely roast goose and the great glorious Christmas tree. So uh, she struck another match on the wall. Suddenly, through the light, she saw her old grandmother. Seeing the grandmother, she cried, Granny. And the granny seemed to be very loving, kind, and gentle. And this expression is being found in her because Granny was very loving and caring towards the little girl. And she requested her granny to take her also along with her because she knew that when the light of the little match burn off, she will also disappear. The grandmother also disappear because that is what her experience is. When the first match lit off, she lost the warmthness as if she was sitting in front of the stove. Second, the imagination of the roasted Goose also had been found lost when the second match was being burned off, and the glorious Christmas tree had also been vanished when the third match was being burned off. Then she quickly struck all the rest of the matches she had in her pocket, for she did not want to keep her grandmother. She did not want to keep. She did so want to keep her grandmother with her. Therefore, she started to burn all the matches one after another because she did not want to lose the light. And when the light goes off, she is very sure that the grandmother would also disappear. Therefore, with the dream of having the image of grandfather in front of her, she burned all the matches that she had with her. The matches flared up with such a blaze that it was brighter than the broad daylight, and her old grandmother had never seemed to be so beautiful and so stately before. Okay, so the light, it created a huge light because she started to burn one match after the other, and the grandmother was seen to be very beautiful and dignified than she had ever seen. She took the little girl in her arms and flew with her high up, so high and so high towards the glory and joy. Now they knew neither cold nor hunger nor fear, for they are both with God. So the little match girl had been carried higher and higher by the grandmother in her hands, and now both of them do not have any feelings of neither cold nor hunger, because they both of them have gone towards God, which means little match girl has died. Now in the cold dawn, the corridor formed by the two houses, sat a little girl with rosy cheeks and smiling lips, dead, frozen to death on the last evening of the old year. Okay, now the little girl is frozen, sitting in between the gap between the two houses, frozen dead, with a rosy cheeks and smiling lips. The dawn of the new year rose on the huddled figure of the girl. She was still holding the matches, and half a pocket had been burnt. So during the morning, it was found that still she was having some matches in her hand, and half of the matches which were kept in her apron had been already burnt. She was evidently trying to warm herself. It shows that she was trying to warm herself. What was showing that she was trying to warm herself? That she was having matches in her hand, and half of the matches had been already burnt. People said. So people said it is the evidence that the child was trying to warm herself. But no one knew what beautiful vision she had seen in what a blaze and glory she had entered with her old grandmother into the heavenly joy and gladness of the new year. But nobody knew how happy she was when she went along to the heavenly abode with her grandmother. What are the dreams and visions she had? It is known only to the child. So this is a tragic end of the story. So we have seen a lot of imaginations of the child in the story, and each imagination that she had symbolizes something. The iron stove symbolizes, so iron stove is a representation or symbolization of feelings of warmth and safety with the child longed for. The Christmas tree is symbolization of undying life and rebirth, or the stamina that is required to endure the winter months. Falling star is a symbol of soul ascending to God. Matches are the representation of warmth of love. It's a symbolization of light of God and hope. Cold is symbolization of hardship, desperation, and helplessness. So these are the symbolizations that are used in the story. Old iron stove is representation of warmth and safety. Christmas tree is symbolization of undying life, means rebirth, or the stamina that is required to enter the winter months. Falling star is representation of soul ascending to God. So the vision that the girl has is a symbol of a girl's soul ascending to heaven. Matches are representation of warmth of love, the light of God and hope. So every time the little girl lit the match, she was having the dream and hope each time. Cold is symbolization of hardship, desperation, and helplessness in life. Hope you understood the lesson and the story. Now I request you to comprehend the passages that are given in your workbook. It's a very simple story. Read once again the chapter, understand it, and then read the questions that are given in the workbook and comprehend it.